What is the secret of success? Or perhaps a better question is, what does true success look like? We know somebody who claimed success. Maybe he could teach us. In Heintek Seder wird erzählt, wie Avram Avinu hat angesagt Eliezer Avdoi. We know in this week's parasha, Avram Avinu tells Eliezer to go, El Arzi ve'Melati Telech, go to my land, the place of my birth, Lokachto Isha livni Yitzchok, and find there, bring from there a wife for my son Yitzchok. In response to Eliezer's question, what if the woman is not interested in coming with me to this land? Should I take your son elsewhere to look perhaps in other places? Avram Avinu answers, be careful not to take my son to any of those places. Don't worry, the Eibush is going to send his malach ahead of you, and you will bring a wife for my son from there, from my family. Weiter, das said fast forward in the parasha, was wird erzählt für Eliezer hat Besuel gesagt die Rede von Avram zu where Eliezer repeats to Besuel and family the things that Avram Avinu had told him. Steht there, it says, Vayomer Avram Elai, he's quoting, Avram Avinu said to me, Hashem Asher Gomer, the Eibush has looked after me, Yishlach Malachoi itoch, he will send his malach with you. V'hitzliach darkecha, and he'll give you success in your path. And you'll be able to bring back a wife for my son from my family. We have to understand. If Eliezer is telling the story and quoting Avram Avinu, why is he misquoting him? How come instead of saying, as Avram did, I will send the malach, David will send a malach ahead of you, he said, David will send a malach with you. Why did he change that? Now, we can not verändern, as das is nicht mehr wie Ashina in Loshen. Now, you can't just say, well, okay, it's just words, not a big deal. Was beit nicht dem Teichen. It doesn't really change the meaning. The meaning is, I was accompanied by an angel, and that was the promise. And you could argue, you know what, Eliezer didn't say word for word exactly what Avram Avinu told him. There were various things that he changed. But this change is big. How do we know? Because previously Rashi already told us. There, Rashi previously, comparing Noach and Avram Avinu, picked up on this difference and said it means a big difference. When I erklärt and explains as follows, Noach, it says he walked with Hashem, like Eliezer says, Itoch. Noach, says Rashi, that means that Noach needed a little bit of assistance as he went on his spiritual path. Whereas Avram Avinu was self-driven, he proceeded on his spiritual path of his own accord. And that's why it says that he walked before the Eibush. And that illustrates there is a big difference between saying es or lefonav, itoch or lefonecha. It's not two ways of saying the same thing. It's a completely different message. And Rashi addresses it. So that means we have to address it even at the pshat level. And by the way, that adds another question, is if he's an movement, it's also not understood. How come if Rashi brought this issue up before, does he not highlight it over here in our parasha and explain it? Why Eliezer is changing not just the words, but the content? Unless, of course, you have to conclude. Seeing as Rashi has already pointed out that they are different expressions, and there's a reason for that difference, when you read the story in our parasha, it will be self-evident that why Eliezer changed the wording from the way that Avram Avinu said it. So why? The explanation is as follows. The Chelek in Teich verteichen zwischen Itoch und Lefonecha is pshuten kemashmai. The reality is that it's very obvious what the difference is between Itoch and Lefonecha. Itoch meant mit dir. The meaning of Itoch means with you. The malach will be with you, at your side, at your service. And Lefonecha fardir. Whereas Lefonecha means the malach will trailblaze ahead of you. Das says in other words, Yishlach Malachoi Itoch meant what Eliezer says, that Avram promised that the Malach would accompany him. That implies that the Malach wird gehen zusammen mit Eliezer und ihm helfen durchführen die Shlichus Batzlacha. The Malach will accompany Eliezer and ensure that the Shlichus succeeds. Similar to how Rashi described Es in Parashas Noach, that it means Sa'ad l'toimchoi. He'll be there as your assistant, as your crutch, as your helper. Mashen can yishlach malacha lefonecha meant, whereas the original expression Avraham Avinu used, which is that the Eibusher will send his malach ahead of you, that implies something completely different. As the malach geht voraus und versichern vom Fried, die Atzlach von Eliezer Shlichus, that means the malach goes ahead, clears the path, puts all the pieces in place, so it's guaranteed that Eliezer succeeds. These are completely different realities of how things will work and how they'll succeed. In dem ersten Fall is the Ikedipiolus Heistadlus mitzad Eliezer. If I'm talking about the Malach at my side as an assistant, then the most important thing is, for me, or in this case Eliezer, to do what I have to do. Now, the Malach wird zu geben asir sad l'toim as ein Ishtadlus soll matzliach sein. I've got to do what I've got to do, Eliezer says, and the Malach will help make sure that it actually gets over the finish line. But the minute Avraham Avinu says, I'm sending the Malach ahead, that implies that the Malach wird nicht nur Messiah sein zu und ihr der Hishtadlus. That doesn't just mean the Malach's there as soon as you need him. He'll be your PA. No, a great seed zu und versichert die Atzlache von Hishtadlus Eliezer von voraus. It means that Malach goes, he's the advanced guard, makes sure everything is set up that Eliezer has to succeed. Und das Avram gewinnt äußern mit seinen Sagen, ich sag mal Lochele von Echem. That is what Avram Avinu intended. Als der Atzlach von Eliezer beschluchus, soll sein in Anöfen, als der Eibusher bewarnt Milchatchila, sie sagt, soll sich abtun karoi. That's what Avram Avinu is telling Eliezer. Don't worry, the Eibusher will ensure, before you even step foot in that direction, that everything is lined up for success. On Schwierigkeiten, without any difficulties. Und also ist es Tage gewinnt, which was actually how Eliezer experienced it. Let's look at all the stages. Right at the beginning of the process. He didn't even have to wait. Eliezer arrives and he doesn't have to wait a moment to find the right girl. As soon as he gets there, Rivka's coming out. Not only that, the fact that she came out is not even thanks to the fact that Eliezer davened, please send me the right girl. At least not the conclusion of his davening. Why? From the pasuk Zakus, the pasuk tells us clearly, before he finished his tefillah, his request to the Eibusher, send me the right girl. There comes Rivka. Even before he concludes his tefillah. That implies that it's not thanks to his tefillah that she's coming. It's clearly orchestrated already from on high that as soon as Eliezer gets there, Rivka's going to come out. And plus, in addition to that, let's look at how he got there. Look from Eliezer's perspective. He had kvitzas haderech. He had this turbo boost. He got there much quicker than he should have. And similarly, from Rivka's perspective, the speed is unusual. As he's she comes up punkt at the right moment. He's not even finished his davening, and there she is. You could say then, how come Rivka didn't come out before he even began to daven? Why does Eibusher wait and time it in such a way that as he's finishing his tefillah, there she is? Is given not to live them, as durch dem Simen, was hat für sich eingezeichnet, mit Philosophers soll wissen, as he it's because he asked for a sign in his davening, and this will tee her up to be able to produce that sign. Aber ihr Ätzen kommen ist scheinbar worden geworden, kann noch jeder hat Mispal gewesen. But the fact that she is going to come out, that is already pre-loaded. It's predetermined. That's what's going to happen, right? And that's why you have even places where it indicates that she came in the middle of it. Well, here the pasuk indicates in the middle of his davening, or at least before the end of his davening. Likewise, that's all the first stage. Then the middle stage, when he's having the conversation with Basul and family, as Basul hot givot makiv sein dem shidduch, as Rashi tells us, as soon as Basul wanted to interfere with the proceedings, his bo malach v'hi malach came, took care of him, and zehu. So, the malachim are there, clearing the way for him. And the same applies right at the end of the story. When Eliezer wanted Rivka to come immediately without delay, unlike the pressure from the family, which was, let her stay here for a year, let her grow up, Und der Ruf ist given the end for Nikla Naira v'nishalo espia, so they came to the conclusion the best way to resolve this is call the girl and ask her opinion. At Rivka take again for it Eilech. And Rivka immediately said, I'm in, I'm going, I'm happy. Smooth, no problems. Der Chayei, man gefindt nicht, dass Eliezer hat mit der früher Bechlal gerät wegen dem Shidduch. What's surprising about this is we have no evidence that Eliezer ever discussed the prospect of a Shidduch with her directly. All we know is that at the well he gave her gifts, which was various kinds of jewelry. And it's quite a stretch to imagine that just because of that she's going to run off with him and say, I'll marry the man you're describing. There is no time here for Rivka to have thought this through, to have mulled this over. Und is gleich beim Fragen, it sees his masculine von Shidduch, and yet, as soon as he asks, would you like to participate? Would you like to come along? She said, I'm coming. I like the Shidduch. Aber Rashi is Moisef from Meforish, and Rashi says more, not just that she said, I'm keen, but she said, I'm willing to go of my own accord, even if you mother and you brother don't want. I'm going. Das heißt, der Eibishter hat also gemacht, als es Maskim sein, und keine Stadtlust mit Zad Eliezer, der Eibishter designed it in such a way that Eliezer didn't have to work hard. Right? And that's also, by the way, this is how we learn that you have to ask a girl's opinion before she marries, so that clearly means that she had to buy in. So when you see this incredible clear path for success that Avram promised and Eliezer witnessed, you can understand why Eliezer didn't divulge that. And he's changed it. He said, the Malach is with me. Why? Basul probably would not have related to this message that the Malach is taking care of anything, which is effectively saying, Basul, you're irrelevant. Initially, when Eliezer made his pitch to Basul, because he wanted Basul's buy-in for the Shidduch, it's an inappropriate thing to say. This is just a formality because Avraham Avinu already promised me the Malach's going to sort it all out. Because that would imply this is already a done deal. Well, then why are we having this conversation? To say that this has nothing to do with me and it was already in place before I left on this journey. Because had he presented that perspective to Basul would have pushed back and said, why are we even having a conversation? Why are we negotiating? You saying this is a fait accompli? You're saying the Malach's already taken care of anything. So why are you even talking to me? Don't you believe your own story? Therefore, Eliezer had to slightly modify the message and say, Avraham Avinu promised me a malach at my side. And I have to do my bit, and that's why we're having this negotiation. Now, with that information, you'll see the other things that Eliezer changes that also now make a lot of sense. Now we can understand something else that Eliezer modified. And not only different from word-wise, but even different to how things played out. He gave Rivka the jewelry before checking who she is. Remember, his mandate is he has to go to Avraham Avinu's family. Surely he should know which family she's from before he gives the jewelry, but he didn't. He just gave the jewelry. But when he tells this part of the story to Basul, Rashi points out that he changed the order, that they shouldn't catch him out and say, what were you thinking to give jewelry to a person you don't even know who you're dealing with? You're claiming that you have to come to the family. That he didn't want them to complain and say, why did you give her jewelry without knowing who she was? So he told them, I checked who she was and then I gave her the jewelry. The fact that Eliezer was willing to give jewelry to Rivka without knowing whose family she belonged to is because he knew that he can trust Avraham Avinu's promise that the Malach is clearing the way for him. And if this is the girl that crossed his path, that's obviously the plan. Especially considering that he didn't even finish his tefillah, and this is the girl who walked out. And she did all of the things that he had put in his sign. Fed the camels, asked her, if you need a place to sleep, etc. Hat schon verstanden und gewusst, als das hat der Malach bewohnt von vor uns. So Eliezer knew and understood clearly, this is the plan. This is the woman that has to marry Yitzchok, as the Malach sorted out. And so he was absolutely certain that David had granted him success on his path, and therefore he could give her the jewelry. But because his whole approach to Besul is not to divulge the Malach is ahead of him. Or if Yishlach Malach itach, where instead of saying that the Malach is blazing the path for me, he says the Malach is assisting me, then it doesn't make sense for him to say that he was so certain he already jumped at Rivka without knowing who she is. To give her jewelry without knowing who and whose family she belongs to. And therefore, as Rashi points out, he modifies the order in which he tells the story. Now, as a pashtus of a goloi, Eliezer need the tzelt and prat from Yishlach Malochi lefonecha. So the way we're seeing the story now is pretty clear that Eliezer does not openly say that the Malach is leading the way and making his path succeed. But he did allude to it. And that's why the modifications he makes are minor. Why? How does Eliezer allude to the fact that he's got this malach making everything work and it's a fail-safe? He alludes to that by adding words Avraham Avinu did not say, I'll send the malach with you and your path will succeed. What is success? You don't see Avraham Avinu saying those words. And likewise, when he tells the story about how he prayed to the Eibishter, he also added similar words to what he had actually prayed. There too he says, Eibishter, if you'll allow my path to succeed. What is success? The Bir and Dem explanation is, the emes badait von Hatzlacha is, the true meaning of Hatzlacha is nicht, wenn der Mensch ist matzliach durch Yegia. True Hatzlacha is not the reward for my investment and efforts. Was the Eibishter gibt der Menschen. True Hatzlacha is a gift from Hashem, and we have evidence for this. That it says by Yosef that Hashem es Yosef. The Eibishter was with Yosef, and then by Yehi Ish Matzliach, he was a successful person. Or Hashem Matzliach biyodeh. The Eibishter gave him success in his hand. Or Vasher hu oiseh, whatever he did, Hashem Matzliach. The Eibishter gives him Hatzlacha. There you have it, the first time we encounter a person where there's a direct correlation between success and how you earn it. How do you earn success? The Eibishter gives it to you. And Eliezer highlights a similar thing by saying, the Eibishter granted success to my path. Just to understand what Hatzlacha is. Hatzlacha is something far beyond the typical I toiled and I achieved. Even though we know from various sources that the achievement after Yegia is way beyond what you would have expected that investment to produce. That's why we call it finding something, because it implies that you find, you don't work to find something. Usually you find something without effort. Oh my gosh, there's money on the sidewalk. The only effort you have to put into a Metzia is picking it up. So even though the Yogaiti is not relative to the resulting Matzasi, but it is the catalyst for the Matzasi, there's a relationship between them. Whereas true Hatzlacha has nothing to do with our efforts, and our efforts have no bearing on that Hatzlacha. It is 100% a gift from on high. That implies the fact that Eliezer added to the message that Avraham gave, that I'll send my malach with you, he adds the words, and give you Hatzlacha. Is effectively the same thing as saying, like Avraham Avinu actually said, I'm sending the malach ahead of you, meaning the results are not going to be because of you. Because true Hatzlacha is a gift from on high, just like the malach being ahead of you is a gift from on high. On the fire. Therefore, when Eliezer describes two to Basul, that his tefillah was, if Hashem, you will give me success. And I hadn't even finished that tefillah. Rivka came out. Basul got it. And so he immediately responded, May Hashem Yotzah. This is clearly from on high. And therefore I can't really fight you. Even Basul is able to recognize that this is something orchestrated from on high. This is true Hatzlacha. To the extent that humans cannot derail or interfere with this process. It's a powerful insight. And it helps us to explain something else that Avraham Avinu said that might have seemed surprising initially. Eliezer asks an authentic question. What if the woman doesn't want to come with me? It's a foreign land. She doesn't know the people. Avraham Avinu is very strong in his answer, and he says, be very careful not to look elsewhere. Hashem who's guided and protected me till now, will send his malach in front of you, and you will take a wife from there for my son. In other words, Avraham Avinu is saying, the Eibush is going to send a malach, therefore I guarantee you that you will come back with a wife for my son. Doesn't seem to make sense. How could Avraham Avinu make such an absolute convicted statement that the Eibush will for sure send you a wife for my son? When that's not up to Eliezer, it's up to the woman. In fact, Rashi says, from here we learn that you cannot marry a woman against her will. So she has to agree. She has free choice. Nobody controls somebody else's free choice. Especially when you consider the very next thing that Avraham says, which is, if for whatever reason it fails, you are clean, you are off the hook from this oath that you're making to me. That's exactly the point. When you have this guarantee that the Malach is going ahead of you, doesn't just mean in front of you. It means that the Malach is operating at a level that is lefonecha, that comes before you, that is beyond you, that is prior to anything that you could do. It's higher than anything that you could do. And therefore the Hatzlacha, the success, is not something that is in any way contingent on any human's input. Even to the extent that a person and their personal interests cannot derail the Eibishter's program. Therefore, of course, a human always retains choice, and Rivka has a choice. Which is why Avraham Avinu has to verbalize the possibility that she doesn't want to come, because she has to have free choice. Despite her free choice, it's still absolutely clear. What the Eibishter wants is going to happen, and therefore you're going to come back with a bride from my family. Which effectively means you're guaranteed to find a woman who will make that choice. In the Maimer Chazal, this whole concept of the incredible guidance that Eliezer had, and the Hatzlacha he was given, gives us another layer of appreciation of something that Chazal say about this particular story, which is that the normal chatting of the servants of our avos is, in a sense, even more beautiful than the instructions given to us in the Torah, and that's why he gets a lot more airtime than most mitzvahs do, any mitzvahs do. Because you're talking about Torah. Torah is not in the Eibishter's hands. Everything the Eibishter controls except our moral choices, our Yirah Shamayim. When it gets to Torah mitzvahs, when it comes to doing Torah mitzvahs or chas v'shalom, the opposite, the Eibishter will never override our free choice. Is given down but this mission that Eliezer is given, there the Malach is taking control. The Hatzlacha is guaranteed, which effectively means you don't really have a choice about how it could work out. Die Hatzlacha is given versichert mir mal afil dort, wo das riert on dem Inyan Abchira. The Hatzlacha is so strongly guaranteed that even at the level of Bechira, it's guaranteed. That's what it means. The sicha, the conversation of the servants of the Avos is more beautiful, meaning higher, more effective than our choices around Torah mitzvahs. But that doesn't just happen in a vacuum. There are two critical prerequisites for this. Now, the two prerequisites, what are they? Aleph is also an avdei avos. You want to have this kind of experience and have this kind of atzlacha that the Eibishter just lays it out for you? You have to be a servant of the avos. An eved was is nikim etzias bifnei atzmei klal. An eved has no personal sense of self, no personal agenda, no personal interest, just there to service his responsibilities. Of course, the servant exists and can achieve things, and even very great things, like finding a wife for Rivka, finding a wife for Yitzchok. The common tziyusai is the mitzvah adam mashkana eved kana rabbi, but his whole being is his master. Whatever he picks up automatically belongs to the master. He has no independence. So you want to have that success from on high, you have to have that kind of bittul of an eved. That's number one. On base, the tzutav zayin inyan hasicha ein sicha the tefillah, and then it has to be sichosan shalav, is the conversation of the servants of the others. The conversation is metaphoric for tefillah. When you daven most sincerely, when you have absolute clarity that you can in no way rely on your own abilities, you have to ask the Eibishter for guidance, for strength, for success. When a person has that level of complete self-surrender, then we are an appropriate person for the Eibishter to send his malach to take care of everything on our behalf and give us hatzlacha. So even though this experience of being somebody with bittul of an eved to the avos, and therefore to everything they stand for, and the sicha, the acknowledgement they have to daven to the Eibishter, that is greater than Terosin Shalbonim. Is aber ich sichasen shabde avos reingestellt in Terosin Shalbonim. This is a parsha shleima b'Terosin. But how do we even know about this conversation? Because of Torah. Torah exposes Eliezer's experience to us. Was der von Guf ist verstandig, which helps to clarify for us. As ich die Bonim kennen, the Grech and the Meile von Veren Avdei Avos, that this is not a once upon a time story. This is a story told to us, implying that we can experience and achieve this. And das der Hira befeuil, was man nimmt heraus from Parsha Shel Eliezer, that is the take-home lesson from this Parsha of Eliezer. Und bei Miyuchot, Fadivach, haben solche gewinnt zu Eise gesehen, sich beschluchus im Shalabes, Shebechol Dor Vodor, especially those of us who are privileged to be the representatives of the Avos in every generation. Rabbi saying in the Avos of our generation are our Rebbes. In the avoid of to have this incredible privilege of going out there to strengthen Judaism, to spread Judaism, and to spread Chassidus. So many people tell you, look, my responsibility in the shlichus is I've got to do what I've got to do. I'm not responsible for all outcomes. I have no control over what happens. I'll go out there, I'll meet the Yid, I'll speak to the Yid, I'll run a program, I'll invite people, but I cannot control how they behave and how they respond. The Shlech is maskin, as a darf sein, übergegeben zu der Shlichus b'chol koichoi. The Shlech accepts that obviously I have to be fully dedicated to my Shlichus. Bis auch nicht kemelichus hanefesh, to the extent that I cannot even relax. Nicht und nicht brei beisai, not me, not my family. Because we're so obsessed all day long with fulfilling the shlichus. But the other person who I'm trying to have a positive influence over is then you can balabos. I don't control the person. Is about bchira. Every person can make their own choices. And I am not capable of forcing somebody to behave in a way that is contrary to the choices that they apparently make. And the word apparently obviously implies the fact that deep down everybody wants to do what the Eibishter wants, as the Rambam famously tells us. So the response to that is the story of Eliezer. When we clarify for ourselves that we are servants on behalf of the Rebbeim, We completely dissolve ourselves in the process. Like a servant represents the master. And dazu is mein Mispal HaKadosh Baruch Hu Hatzlacha b'midas shlichus, and we don't leave it at that. We daven sincerely to the Eibishter to help us succeed in our shlichus. Then is mein Muftach, then we're guaranteed, as Hashem Yishlach Malochi Lefonecha, that the Eibishter will send His Malach ahead of us, and v'hitzliach darkecha, and that Malach will guarantee us success, even where the success doesn't make sense to us. The Eibishter versichert him Hatzlacha b'shlichus, the Eibishter guarantees us Hatzlacha in our shlichus, over Meshach, the ganze shlichus, and in every element of the shlichus, because we identified, right, the Eibishter's hand at the beginning, middle, and end of Eliezer's shlichus. Likewise for us. Sai bali chosoi, that the Eibishter gives success when we leave to go on shlichus. Sai bim koim shlichus gufa, and success within the shlichus itself. Sai yom keren sich from mekem shlichus haprat hamasuim hazeh shebazeh. And the element of, when you got to come back from your shlichus, whatever that means, from time to time, or eventually at some point. And will bring back a wife. A wife we know is always a metaphor for the Jewish people. Bringing the Jewish people back to be a wife to the Eibishter, to be bound to the Eibishter. To awaken one Jew and another Jew and illuminate their Jew to the extent that they become independent sources of light. That each of them should become the Eibishter's shliach. Okay, Psagdin Rambam, as the Rambam paskins, that even though choice is a fundamental principle of Judaism, and it's the underpinning of the whole concept of Judaism, is that the Torah guarantees, like Avraham Avinu guaranteed Eliezer, it's a guarantee that every year at the end of time will do tshuva, and will be immediately redeemed. Amen. Ken Yehi Ratzon.